Rahim. At the beginning of this session, please allow me to welcome our distinguished and extremely accomplished panelists, Dr. Robert Strom, the Director of Research Policy at the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, Mr. Fred Farina, the Chief Innovation Officer at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, and Executive Director of Office of Technology Transfer, Dr. Gaurav Agrawal, Vice President of Baker-Hughes for Technology. So for maximizing the benefits of this session, which is limited to 45 minutes, and I agreed with Dr. Wael that we will reduce it to 35 minutes, and we will keep the remaining 10 minutes for interaction between the audience and the panelists. I will ask specific questions to each panelist and give him equal time, like others, to express his thoughts about the subject of this session, which is the technology transfer through entrepreneurship. So I will start with Mr. Fred, and I will ask him questions related to his presentation. I wish I have seen his presentation before, because I was thinking that I'm doing a homework, and I was looking into his presentations on his website and in the internet. Mr. Fred, in your presentations that explain Caltech's model for technology transfer, you always refer to specific concepts. The first concept, you always quote Michael Porter, the famous professor at Harvard Business School, that although companies and individuals create a large number of innovations, universities and research centers institutionalize entrepreneurship and ensure a steady flow of ideas. The presentation of Dr. Gaurav showed another story. He showed that a company like Baker-Hughes works in institutionalizing entrepreneurship, and it's linking the R&D activities with business incubation and technology transfer. So I need to hear from you and from Dr. Gaurav about the university perspective for institutionalizing entrepreneurship and relating it to technology transfer, and the perspective of a multinational corporation such as Baker-Hughes in institutionalizing entrepreneurship and relating it with technology transfer. We will start with Mr. Fred, then we will transfer the question to Dr. Gaurav.
It's a pretty broad question. So your question is about the quote from Michael Porter and how universities institutionalize entrepreneurship,
yes.
Or is
yes.
it why? Is it?
Yeah. The question is, let us make it in a simple form. How does the Technology Transfer Office of Caltech support entrepreneurship? And what is the organic relationship between your office and the entrepreneurship program of Caltech?
So Caltech does not have an entrepreneurship program.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been very organic. So it's been more about, and I think the most important part of it is to create a culture where entrepreneurship is accepted as a respected activity, as opposed to frowned upon, like it used to be at Caltech before 1995. Before that time, you had faculty doing startups that had to be hiding them because it could hurt your tenure prospect, it would hurt your career, mm-hmm. And your colleagues, would ostracize you in many ways because all they wanted you to do is, go after Nobel Prizes and medals and things like that in paper. So the culture change is what really has made entrepreneurship at Caltech take a hold, and making it an accepted thing, a rewarded, recognized activity has really changed that. And so that has been the key. Now, all the programs that we heard about, all the wonderful things that my colleagues have done at other universities, for the most part, are geared towards students, not faculty. And that's That's wonderful, and actually that's our next step at Caltech, because we are sort of neglected the student, and because we're primarily a research institution, and you saw that in our mission statement, it's research through integrated education. So research comes first, and so that's why in some ways the students are, I wouldn't say an afterthought, but they're a part of a bigger mission. The mission is research, and they learn through that. So that's why we're not been focused on students. We are creating, so our policies at Caltech, the nature of the place is so, has such low bureaucracy and so few rules that it has enabled the culture to take hold without any impediment. And our role is primarily to remove obstacles and to make the process, to facilitate the process and make it easier for the faculty.
So simply we could say that entrepreneurship at Caltech is a practice rather than a process. You practice entrepreneurship?
Yeah, practice and the culture.
Okay. Dr. Gaurav?
I want to make a slight distinction between, and maybe it's obvious to all of us, but it's worth reiterating, the subtle distinction between innovation and entrepreneurship. I think, people, of course, we all know, we are all fascinated by people who are both, but at the same time, one can exist without the other. So within Baker-Hughes, we promote both. There are a lot of innovators who have fun doing science and research. For them, the reward is a patent, is a recognition of some sorts. And then we have entrepreneurs who don't stop there, and sometimes they are not even the innovators themselves, but they somehow are the risk takers, they have the drive, but they don't stop short of commercialization, right? So that's what we call the entrepreneurs. And we try to identify both. And of course, we publicize our own programs internally to both. But at some point of time, we realize and recognize that each one of them has roles. And sometimes a good innovator does not really want to become an entrepreneur, which is not a failure for us. For us, as we look to the outside world, and particularly our interactions with the universities, whether we call it innovation programs or entrepreneurship programs, is really twofold. One, we look at inspired research. We do our due diligence with the universities. We participate in the consortiums. We form them with faculties. We bring them in-house, or we go there. We try to educate them on our challenges. We try to familiarize them with our taxonomies and our realities and cost structures and whatnot. And the second one is the free research, right? We are trying to always, we have our antennas out. We are harnessing and trying to just scout out of the research and the output of the universities, regardless of our needs. And there are a couple of examples I can share. One of them is in communications. Our communication is through what's called mud pulse telemetry. And the mud pulses, these pressure pulses that go through the mud in the column, and that is how we get to interrogate the downhole, which could be a few kilometers below the earth. We all know what the wireless and the EM technology has done the wonders in the outside world, all the way to aerospace, to the mobile technologies and whatnot. So we are actively looking always to those breakthroughs in that space that can help us. There are some fundamental reasons why, of our nuances, but nevertheless, we are fascinated by those fields, and we look at that. We invited NASA, and looking at their websites and catalogs, we found that NASA has a technology of water refining. And this water refining technologies was implemented by them, and they have the patents and all, for the space station, of how, when you live in the space stations, how the water is conserved and how the water is purified. For us, in oil and gas, water is a big challenge from fracking industries, you may have heard. So we invited them with an absolutely no commitments meetings of just trying to understand how we can use that fundamental modulated technologies and apply to oil and gas to do that. And I think we'll have to continue doing that. We can't, university has to do what university does best, and we have to let university do best without too much corrupting their minds.
Can I add one point that I mentioned? The proposition of entrepreneurship is very different when it comes to faculty versus students. Okay, students, you can have them sit in a class, take a class, go through a course over a year, 2 years, whatever. Faculty, at least at Caltech, they will not come to a class. We've tried teaching the basics of venture capital, of term sheets, etc. They are not interested. They have no time, they have no interest until they want to do a company. And then they want to know everything in a few hours, in a few days, and then you have to send one-on-one with the faculty member over the course of a few days, bring experts, and get them a crash course on things. So it's a very different proposition.
Okay, so let us take the discussions into another direction. Dr. Strom, in 2012, you and 2 other Kauffman researchers published a paper titled University Technology Transfer Through Entrepreneurship, Faculty and Students and Spin-offs. In this study, you refer to 2 models for university entrepreneurship ecosystems for technology transfer: the systematically and the organically developed systems. MIT and Stanford were referred to as universities of the organic model, while Harvard and UC Berkeley are of the systematic model. Personally, I believe that KFUPM could benefit from both models. Please try to explain to us how the model in each case works and ensures that interested faculty and students of the university are able to access and leverage the entrepreneurial resources available.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my best to answer. Yeah, I think when I got off the plane a couple of days ago, whenever it was, I thought I had a pretty good idea of what I was going to say in this panel session. And then I participated in this conference for 2 days, and whatever I thought I was going to say, I've kind of thrown that out. And I'll do my best to answer that question. But I sort of grew up as an academic, so give me the freedom to answer a question that sort of I want to ask. That's related to this. Okay. And it is related because it has to do with KFUPM's what I see as a sincere interest and desire to do things that are what Professor Beba has referred to as third generation universities, and I think that's very admirable. It's even for a university that's 50 years old, change is not always easy, and for a university to have the confidence to invite other people in, outsiders, to recommend things that they might want to think about doing. I've been associated with a number of universities, and generally when outsiders come in, it's people on an accreditation committee, and they answer only what they're asked to answer and don't offer a whole lot of other information. And I think the openness of this dialogue in the past couple of days has been absolutely remarkable. And I think that is related to the question in terms of different means of, in a narrower sense, different means of technology transfer from a model where a university is very structured and is very kind of stuck in its own silos, and without changing the mission and without changing the culture, because those are difficult to change, sort of do the best they can in technology transfer. And Fred mentioned several of the places that do very well in terms of rating and in terms of patents and disclosures and that sort of thing. And Harvard and Berkeley are 2 of those. And those are 2 places that are very stuck in their own silos. But despite that, they're very, very good universities, and they do a very good job with technology transfer. A couple of other places on that list, Stanford and MIT and Caltech, which is kind of an outlier because of its much smaller size, aren't quite as stuck in their own silos and follow what we called in that paper. And just a slight correction, the other 2 authors weren't Kauffman researchers; they were from other institutions. Follow what we call sort of a laissez-faire. It would be a decentralized, sort of let things bubble up, and that's what I heard from Caltech as well. And the sort of let things bubble up thing requires doing things that are, I think, Gaurav, you mentioned it in your comments in terms of relationship building first. And I see that from my perspective with Kauffman Foundation I've spent the first half of my life at universities kind of begging for money, and then the last 18 years at Kauffman Foundation being on the other end of that. And I see the relationship building as being, I could have probably been pretty good at what I did at a university had I been at the foundation first. But as relationship building as being very important, and whether it's relationship building with faculty early on, or whether it's relationship building with corporations or foundations, that's absolutely critical. And that's what this place is doing, and I think that's part of what leads to what we also referred to in that paper was sort of an external or an internal view of the university. And I think that's moving from what most universities have started at in first and second generation universities, which is an internal view, moving more towards an external view. So what I see KFUPM is doing is moving to a third generation university, moving from an internal to an external view, and moving from one that's structured to decentralized. And that's not easy. That's certainly not easy at all. That takes quite a bit of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Mr. Fred, another concept in your presentations, the typical startup deal of Caltech OTT is to follow a balanced portfolio for technology transfer between taking equity shares and taking royalties. Please explain if this approach was designed intentionally by Caltech for supporting technology transfer through entrepreneurship.
So the answer is yes. And so the idea of equity is that in our world, in our model, we're trying to really be a partner with the startup as opposed to, there's certain universities that they have a technology, a startup, they license it, and they take the position implicitly that they know that the startup is going to fail, okay, because most do, they're not wrong. So let me take as much as I can from the inception, either in licensing fees, getting all the patents fees back, et cetera, because so that they're going to fail, so let me get everything now up front. We take a different view, where we say, okay, we'll take a risk with you. So instead of you giving us licensing fees for tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars from the get-go, which mostly startups cannot afford, we'll take a piece of equity, because equity at first is worth nothing. It's a small piece, so it doesn't really affect investments later on.
How much is that small piece?
Generally, it's around 5%, and it's pretty common around the United States. There's a few exceptions, but take 5%. And also to take a royalty on products, that's also important, and I'll explain why in a minute. So the idea of equity is like, we're a partner with you, we'll take that in lieu of fees, we'll defer reimbursements of patent expenses for the first 2-3 years until you have decent capital, because we understand that every penny should be spent in the first few years on developing a product and advancing it to a stage where more investment can be put in the company, or a large company is interested in buying the company, so the startup company. So that's the key part. We're partners with you, we're going to help you. And I can't tell you how many times we do licenses with startups and how many times we have to renegotiate. Because the CEO thought, oh, we're going to get a milestone in a year and a half, we're going to sell this much, and invariably, because they're very optimistic, they don't reach it, they come back and say, oh, can we change that? Or even the royalty rate. And it turns out our margin is 1.5%. This 2% royalty cannot work, so can we renegotiate? Now, of course, you have to be open to that renegotiation. And the last point I'd like to make is that, from our perspective, so we want to make it easy for the partner, but also we want to make sure that if it becomes a huge success, we have some kind of upside. And the upside can be the equity part or the royalty part, depending on the situation. And when you do a license, it's very hard to determine which one is going to be the one that's going to return funds. I've seen companies that we thought the product's going to sell and the patents are going to cover the products, and the company comes to an IPO and they have pretty much no sales, but they become a licensing business and still with good technologies, and the royalty part is worth nothing. Everything is made on the equity. and vice versa, you get situations where you get diluted, funding comes and A, B, C, D rounds come and go, and at the end you end up with a very small equity, if not close to nothing. And the only thing you have is the royalty on a product if they actually sell products. So I think it's important to have both because you don't know which one will return to the university.
Dr. Strom, during the presentation of Mr. Fred, he referred to the volume model for technology transfer that was developed by researchers from Kauffman and was published in 2007 in the National Bureau of Economics. Can you please provide us with additional information about this model and how it works, and if you know how many universities in the U.S. have adopted and adapted themselves to this model?
Yeah, the first part of that's an easy question. The second part of that's a difficult question.
Yes.
The easy part of the question is that we simply believe in the power of markets, power of free markets. And anytime you restrict entry into markets, you're restricting efficiency. And so the more ideas that can get out into the market, the better opportunity there is for some of those ideas to succeed and some to fail. Picking winners in any field is a difficult process. And picking winners when there is lack of information, imperfect information, very little information, both about the invention and about the course of the future, is an almost impossible task. So more ideas are better than less ideas, and we sort of believe in the marketplace of ideas. For the other, how many universities have adopted this? The answer is I don't know. I don't think there's been a sea change in the last 6 or 7 years since we've filed this, since we published this. Fred would know better than I would. But I think that goes back to part of my first issue, is that it's very difficult for universities to change. This may be a horrible analogy, but yesterday we toured. It was a fantastic dinner for those of you who weren't there. But we toured the science. What was the name? Sci-fi. Yeah, and it was a wonderful hands-on exhibit. It was for kids, but we acted like kids, and we really enjoyed it. And it was just a fantastic sort of lifelike exhibit. We also went to a heritage restaurant, which provided excellent food, but also a tour of a museum. And this museum was an archaic museum with things stuffed behind glass that I don't think anybody really understood quite as well as they did with their hands on. Okay, but the point is, the analogy may fall apart. But I think to essentially for universities to view the more science museum, hands-on kind of thing, and do that and be open to approaches to technology transfer is difficult when the technology transfer office sort of operates in many cases like that second museum, with the block behind cases. And we want to protect our intellectual property rather than we want to find a way to move our intellectual property out for the benefit of the university, certainly, but more importantly for the benefit of society, for the benefit of somebody's presentation earlier today talked about future GDP really being dependent on these things. So it's really more for the benefit of society, and university ought to act in the public interest. But in many cases, the restrictions that Fred was talking about in terms of whether it's a technology transfer officer who begs for forgiveness rather than asking for permission, or whether it's an enlightened university administration or board of directors that sort of see this as a role of the university is difficult. So my short answer to that is I don't think there's been a lot of change, but I don't know that for a fact.
I'll add to that. The fact is, universities are almost forced into this home run model because they're not given the resources to actually protect the intellectual property. So if you can't protect it, then you publish it. If you publish it, then it goes into the world. And the truth is, and that's why I believe in patents, and they're just a means to an end, not an end, but because they allow you to get a monopoly for a certain time, and if you don't have that, investors are not going to put money into your company. So they're important to get. to get someone to then take the technology to the market, because these ideas through papers are not enough. You know, it needs a lot more development, and for someone to invest the time and money into the development, you need some kind of protection. So most universities don't have resources for patenting, and so they're kind of forced into this home run model where they have to select very early on the ones they think are going to be big. They're wrong most of the time. And on the other hand, places like Stanford, MIT, Caltech patent very liberally and then license them out very easily and quickly, organically, and let the market decide which ones are going to be valuable.
I think this is a valuable lesson to KFUPM to benefit from. And hopefully we can move forward and start a procedure for implementing this kind of new thinking about technology transfer from universities. You know.
Particularly when you start, you want to encourage faculty to. I mean, the other point I'd like to make quickly is that if you don't patent a lot, faculty will stop disclosing inventions. So if new faculty comes in the university, they will disclose an invention. You come in and you evaluate and say, you know what? I sent 100 summaries to 100 companies of this invention. They came back. Nobody's interested. So sorry, I'm not going to patent it. So next time around, same thing. And after 2 or 3 times, they will stop disclosing. And then you will lose that faculty member pretty much forever in terms of technology transfer. So the encouragement is very important.
By the way, during your visit last night to Celtic, did they show you a film? You know, they have a nice IMAX dome there, you know, and they have a very immersive film, The Journey to Mecca. It didn't have time.
We saw the film, but not the journey. Yes.
Okay. Dr. Gaurav, last year, MIT recruited Dr. Ruth Graham, a world-class British expert in knowledge systems, to develop a study on the most effective university technology innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems. In her study, Dr. Graham indicated that the lack of multinational corporations in the region of a university represents a major challenge for a university that would like to develop systematically an ecosystem for technology transfer through entrepreneurship. Yesterday, we listened to His Excellency the Rector during his speech, mentioning that KFUPM now has at its campus the world's largest cluster of petroleum-related R&D centers. And he indicated that this represents both a challenge and an opportunity. I would like you to comment on this, please.
Whatever His Excellency said was right.
He is His Excellency.
Yes. You know, multinationals have to do their part. You know, entrepreneurial small companies, Silicon Valley, many other spots in the world, they've done a phenomenal job, absolutely phenomenal job in the last 10 years, well, actually 20 years, to change our thinking to the point that, you know, multinationals themselves, most of them, you know, for example, the tech transfer office within the universities, the entrepreneurship within the universities, they are a little bit of a foreign concept to what university is, right? Universities is about, you know, publishing high quality papers, not patents. So the focus of application, the focus of monetizing is, again, relatively a new concept there. Similarly for multinationals, how to harness, how to give the right motivations to the right entrepreneur is still an emerging thoughts within multinationals. We're dealing with it. We are doing a little better than last few years, but we have a long way to go. We are not as risk-taking. Again, it's part of a little bit of the industry that we participate in, oil and gas. When you look at our product life cycles, when you look at the turnovers of the new products, when you look at the new products adoptions and so on and so forth, you know, we are not a very risk-friendly company. So we who participate in this ecosystem reflect that. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any pockets within technologies that we shouldn't aggressively pursue, just the way a small 8-10 people company in Silicon Valley does that. So we have a lot to learn from them. We have a lot to learn from the agility from them. So this open innovation is while it is not new, how we execute and how we benefit from that is still an open game. So what His Excellency said, to create the incubators, I think we have to focus on the right activities here. I was talking on in the break. If you look at the Wall Street Journal statistics of number of patents which are commercial in the last 50 years, 5 decades, that number bounces between, if my memory serves me right, between 2.6, 2.8, somewhere thereabouts. While the number of the denominator, which is the number of total patents, that has exploded over the years. So, Fred has said that, many speakers have said that, don't go for this home run. I think you have to focus for the activity, you have to focus for the trust, you have to focus for the partners, you have to focus for openness. That means we who participate in the industry should know as much as we can about the university, and university should know as much as about us. These magic moments will happen.
Great.
Can I add something about multinationals? I think in a different angle, I think they help a lot in your area because Silicon Valley is an example where HP and Intel, for the very simple reason that startup companies can poach very qualified people who know the industry they're in from those companies. Managers, people who have been at the company for 10, 15, 20 years are looking for something new and can jump to a startup. So from that perspective, I think they're very useful in an area where you are. We don't have the fortune to be in an area with a lot of multinationals in the tech, and that presents some difficulties for us.
Now let us open the questions. We have an opportunity here to have access to the wealth of experience that our panelists have. And we would like to see rich engagement between the audience and our panelists.
Sir, it will not be a question, but I have to share an experience from Far East, talking about the equity thing into the, how much of it would it be for the faculty and so on.
The equity against the
the
licensing
equity of the startups,
Yes.
Whether it is the research institute or the university, when there is a startup of a technology patented at the university. Now, at HKUST, so this is just, again, yet another example of things are so different all over the place. So at HKUST, we go for 3% of equity for any startup that uses the patent that has been developed within the system. And usually the patent stays, not usually, almost all the time with the university. And that 3% actually is to show the commitment of the university rather than making the money or getting the revenue out of it, especially in this new environments, because we are a very new establishment. So I think something, as a different example, we do have only 3%, but we do encourage the startups to try to get professional people to run the startup system. So we are not very much like I heard this morning, in some in some universities where engineering is, at the forefront, and they allow the engineers and scientists to do the business. We would like to see, mostly, to have professional business people to take over the startups and then move on in that way.
Many UK universities follow this model, and they try to ask the university professor to go back to his class.
This is exactly what
his lab, and bring the professionals to the startup for moving it forward.
Just another model. That's what I wanted to share.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Said.
Shukran. Can you provide with some examples of A, conflict of interest, B, late delivery, and C, failure of either innovations or startups, and how you dealt with them? Thank you.
You are addressing this question to Mr. Fred.
I'll give you an example of conflict of interest because we see that all the time. For example, professor starts a company. The company is outside the university, has a licensing relationship with the company. The university has a license to the company on the IP. And subsequently, the company, with some of their funding, funds the research lab, sends money to the research lab to do research. And so most of the time, when they do research for a company, IP rights flow back to the company. So the people in the lab, if they're not aware of what's happening, their contribution to the inventions and the new IP would flow back to the company without their knowledge. Maybe they don't want that. So this is an example where, in all cases of conflict, the key is disclosure. Everybody has to say exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, so that you can manage the conflict. Conflicts shouldn't be a killer. They should be managed. If there's no interest, there's no conflict. Okay. That's why there's a conflict, because something interesting to do, and we try to find a way to do it. The way we are handling it at Caltech, we ask the faculty member to put together what's called a research management plan, where they tell us exactly what the funding, what the company is going to do, who are the students or the personnel working on that versus the other projects in the lab, and that's monitored that way. So that's an example of conflict.
Dr. Gaurav, would you like to comment?
Conflicts are everywhere. I think we have learned to survive and thrive in a fishbowl environment. And, for example, I'm sure we have some faculty here. A lot of times we are not in a power to, and we won't do that. You shall only work with us. For knowledge economy to just generate the scale, whether it's bioproteins that we saw or the Google text, you have to work with other companies too. So effectively, if a faculty A is working with company X, company Y, company Z, I represent company X, then by the nature of your association of multi-pronged associations, there is conflict, right? So of course we manage conflict by bringing lawyers, but they do only so good. The US government has changed the patent laws of USA, which has helped us from first to invent to first to file. So a lot of that conflict came is who came up with this idea first? Did I come up with an idea? Did you come up with an idea? We are just talking among friends, we exchange ideas. So that has helped us to the way. But at the end, there is of course the paper trail, or there is governance, there is trust, there is ethics, and at the end, what stays is friendship.
Third generation of universities, which we are talking about, will it transform the role of university from pursuit of knowledge to pursuit of money?
That is your choice, right? Most of the colleges, again, I'm sorry, I keep bringing USA. I just came from I stayed there for a better portion of my life. The colleges, the universities are most of the universities, I should say, not every, under the tagline it says not-for-profit institution. I think the activities should reflect that, right? So a lot of this metrics, which is revenue generating from royalties and few other things, sometimes you have to ask, why were you founded? But to your question, it is your choice.
Yeah,
I'll just jump in there just a minute. In the U.S., a good deal of what's happening now is that state legislatures are cutting back on funding to public universities and telling public universities essentially to go out and raise your own money through what they loosely term economic development. What they are indirectly saying is find a home run and earn your own money. And universities are reacting to this, public universities are reacting to this in a couple of ways. Predictably, they're increasing tuition to offset some of those costs, but they are doing more and more with trying to capitalize on the inventions of faculty. My own view of that is that mostly unsuccessful. Mostly the costs are greater than the returns, but they feel under pressure to do this. So there is some public pressure as well in the U.S. for universities to blur that duality of what you're talking about of knowledge versus money. My own view is obviously that my own view is that knowledge should be produced first, and to the extent that knowledge is produced consistent with the mission of the university, if there's money to follow it, fine. But it's knowledge first.
I don't think there's a danger of universities changing their mission from pursuit of knowledge versus pursuit of money. That's not going to happen. And we are not-for-profit organizations, and the money we get, we use it for research and education, not to distribute to shareholders. That is the structure. However, there's a lot of fiscal pressures, even at private universities in the US. We have to run the place. Everything is more expensive. We have to, the things we pursue are very difficult problems of, societal, humanity, all these great questions we're trying to ask, push knowledge, that costs money. Educating people costs a lot of money. So there's pressures to raise more money. Now, if people think that they're going to solve their problems through IP, I think they're just looking at the wrong area, because just look at the last 50 years of technology transfer. The money raised through that is very small compared to other sources, whether you look at philanthropy or other sources of funding. And so what universities to do in the US now they're doing is diversify their funding. It used to be very, very reliant on federal funding. Most top universities have 90-some% of their research budgets from the federal government, even private ones. And now they're trying to diversify and do more work with corporations and collaborate more with foundations and other partners who have the ability to fund more research.
Dr. Samir.
I would like to follow up also. I think we are learning at KFUPM, during the past few years we have, now 180 patents. We know, we don't know how many of them they are going to make it, We learned that, I don't think it is, we are going to make money. It is basically, we are serving the community. The director mentioned the ecosystem. We'd like to be part of that. And I don't think the university understand that. I don't think we are investing to make money. It is to the knowledge, how can you help the society, but to depend on, to count on those to come, I don't think it is, within our, mind. Some of those, they will take years, to come, and if it will come, I don't. So I don't think, the university, at least from KFUM, we learn it, and I don't think this is, it is, as I said, it is the knowledge transfer, it's helping the society, it's the whole ecosystem within the kingdom, but not for, making money.
Yeah, even, it's our announced key performance indicators of the technology transfer from KFUPM, economic growth and job creation is the most important thing. The autumn statistics come second or third, isn't it, Dr. Wad? Even our international advisory board has warned us many times about, just counting the returns from technology transfer and focusing more on supporting entrepreneurship. Dr. Strom, I see that some of our graduate students here are available in this room, and you highlighted a lot in your 2012 study the role of graduate students in technology transfer through entrepreneurship. Do you have a kind of guidance for them, about this issue?
Yes, I do. I think particularly in the sciences, it used to be that graduate students in the sciences would get academic jobs, would get tenure, and live happily ever after. Mm-hmm. That's not the case anymore. Mm-hmm. They may get postdocs and live in a postdoc world for many, many years, which is not exactly a lucrative world. And they may also capitalize on what they've learned in their education about science to turn that into mixing innovation and entrepreneurship. And I would just say, be aware of that as you go through your graduate program. And in particular, if the area that you're interested in, your major professor or the person who runs the lab also has that interest, take that as a part of your education and understand that that's a very viable career option, as is working working in industry as well. But there's sort of a, another track in terms of entrepreneurship and innovation that in the last several years has really become much more viable. And through interacting with professors and interacting with what goes on in the business school and the technology transfer at the university, you'll be prepared for that.
I have a bit of a word of advice to grad students. First of all, it's always the best scenario when you have faculty member team with, including a faculty member, student, and postdoc, decide to do a startup. The student and the postdoc, when the student graduates, they take it out and they are the company while the faculty member stays at the university and helps on the other side on their consulting day, whatever the situation is. And I would say for grad students, this is the time to do it, okay? Don't wait 10 years. If you want to do it, don't wait 10 years until, when you have maybe kids, responsibilities, then you need a stable job. And that, as a grad student, you know how to live on very small money, on very little food, and you know how to work hard. So do it early. What you learn from the process will be invaluable anywhere you go after that, whether you go to a large company, go in academia, or other places. Do it early because this is the time to do it.
Okay. So at the end of this session, please share with me thanking and appreciating our distinguished and accomplished panelists.
Dr. Samir, if you want to come here, we're going to just say a few words to, to close the forum. So just from my side, I would like to say thank you very much to our KFUPM people who supported us running this show. I know a couple of people who I want to just mention by name, Salih Al-Shiban, and Muhammad Shukri Khalaf, Mu'taz Hamdan, and all the PR club students. They've been doing a tremendous job. My colleagues also in the Entrepreneurship Committee. And if you just join me just to give them a round of applause to say thank you. Myself and Salih didn't have a nice vacation during, the Hajj vacation. We were working together, and he deserved just a big thank you. And we would like also to thank our sponsors, Wa'id, Baker-Hughes, Al-Abdul Karim and Al-Inma, and Blue Vine. Thank you very much for sponsoring us. It's not the first, it's not going to be the end of the sponsorship. We hope to sponsor us by any means. And also, we would like to thank our distinguished guests, particularly those who came all the way from the United States, from Hong Kong. Thank you so much. You've been a great help to us, help us, shape up the future of entrepreneurship in relation to technology transfer for KFUPM. And this will be, I can assure you, this will be a historical forum forward after 50 years down the road when the university will celebrate its 100th anniversary. They will remember this forum, that it was the real start for creating an entrepreneurial culture at KFUPM that will impact the whole nation, inshallah. So I'll leave the floor to Dr. Samir just to say a few words, and then we'll be finishing the forum.
Thank you, Wael. I will echo what Wael has mentioned. The university is always dynamic. We have, very talented people, and every once in a while we have a gifted one. A few years back, Iyad Al-Zaharnah was the director of the Innovation Center, where the number of patents, as I mentioned earlier, went from 4 into 004, and now this year we'll be hitting about 80. And believe me, we are investing a lot in those. We are, spending a lot. We are not expecting any return, but anyway. So last year also, we have another talented person, very energetic, Wael Musa, mashallah. We have selected him to be the director of the business incubation, and as well, he's running the Entrepreneurship Institute. The Entrepreneurship Institute was established a few years back, but it was not active. One of our faculty members, he said, students, they don't know about these activities. Yes, they don't know in the past, but now we have started. Last year, we have the competition for the students. So basically, we are taking another dimension. This is another part of the whole ecosystem. So we have the innovation, we have the entrepreneurship. We would like to spread the culture. And as I said, Dr. Suwailem, I think Dean of Engineering, he mentioned, we are giving a pulse, okay, for the entrepreneurship, and we hope that, it will go. So we are counting, we learn a lot from the past 2 days, yesterday and today. I'm sure, some of you will be participating also in this afternoon, in the whole week, and, ultimately the Babson will be helping, our faculty. As I said, this is, a strategy in which we would like to, have everybody at KFUPM, buy in the idea and the concept. And once they are buy in, I think the thing will move in faster pace. So as Wael mentioned, this workshop was a great success. We learned a lot from it. We will implement, the different experiences, and, definitely there is no one model will fit all. So we will be, utilizing, and I'm sure we will be in contact with you. I'm sure we'll be inviting some of you to come again in here and helping us to shape the entrepreneurship culture within KFUPM. Again, I would like to thank all the speakers, for the wonderful job they have done, and they came all the way in here and sharing their experience, which it's really great. Again, our supporter, sponsor, especially Waad, and I hope we will be, working together. Waad, they are going, as we have mentioned, they are going to be in Dhahran Techno Valley, so hopefully we'll be working with them. And I hope, as I said, KFUPM is always dynamic and always, adapting new, the latest in everything. So, and I hope we will continue in that one. Thank you very much.